Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the My Council Services webinar for environmental and waste services. Thank you for joining. My name's Bernie Simmons. I'm going to be the primary voice that you hear across the next 50 or 60 minutes or so. That's how long we plan to run for as we take you through digital transformation for waste and environmental services. The fact that you're just hearing from me does not necessarily mean that I'm the only part of the Avivus team that's contributing significantly to this morning. I'm actually working closely with my colleague Rachel Clinton. Rachel is facilitating in the background, and I'll talk more about Rachel's role, although it will be, for good or ill, my voice that you hear over the next hour, as I said. So in terms of a bit of an introduction and welcome, the agenda for today is we'll give you a bit of recent background, not so much about Avivus, the company. That will become apparent as we move through the next hour, but more about kind of the application and and how to approach transformation for waste services and more broadly environmental services. We'll give you a brief overview of the platform structure. We'll give over the majority of the time that we've got together to give you a demonstration of some of the technology live. As any of you who are familiar with end-to-end waste solutions that are digital in nature, there's an awful lot of technology packed into these things. So we'll give you and I think what I would describe as an overview, but it will be a live walkthrough of areas of functionality. So you should get a good sense of what the art of the possible is and how it looks when you're doing that on our platform, which is My Council Services. And we do encourage you to ask questions as we go through, although because we're on a webinar format, which I'm sure, given the current ongoing health emergency situations that we're all having to navigate and live under, you'll be very familiar with working online with colleagues, certainly over the last 6 or 7 months that we've been enduring this. But we do have some sort of particular, I suppose, rules of engagement, really, and I'll just run through those briefly. So in terms of FAQs, frequently asked questions, the session is being recorded. We will also send you copies of slides. If we reference any specific case studies, we'll link you to those as well. We'll send you links to resources. If you like what you see today, but you want to get into more detail, because I said this is a kind of a gallop through what an end-to-end digital platform can look like for waste, then just ask us and we can arrange sessions for individual organisations. This is really a kind of a taster session to give you a bit of an introduction to it, really. But that said, as I mentioned a moment ago, we do encourage you to ask questions. What we do though, because we've got quite a large audience online this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, we do mute everybody's line because you'll probably, well, almost certainly will be working either at home or potentially in an office. I think probably the former is more likely than the latter. And we're conscious that you might have welcome or unwelcome visits from children who are at home perhaps, or other members of your household, domestic pets that clatter into your workspace. So we mute everybody's lines to avoid any background noise. But we do not want to stop you asking questions, and the way of asking questions is to use the chat facility on the GoToWebinar console. And if you could direct those questions to my colleague Rachel, Rachel will be fielding those questions as we move through the webinar. We've tried it other ways around with me as the facilitator answering questions, but it just doesn't work. I just haven't got the bandwidth or the mental capacity to run through the programme and to deal with questions. So my colleague Rachel is covering me in that angle. If you ask a question that requires a bit more of a detailed response and doesn't kind of lend itself to a chat type facility, then Rachel might suggest we take that call offline and we'll come back to you afterwards. But we'll do our best to answer questions as we go, so please don't hesitate. So there's some of the kind of rules of engagement and kind of general practice for these sorts of things. I'm sure it's all fairly familiar by now. We'll also send you a copy of the recording as well, so you'll be able to access it after the event as an on-demand recorded activity. Let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges to waste and environmental services. And they are, I think, particularly interesting from a local authority perspective because they have almost a unique level of complexity and resource intensivity. They are complex processes and they do require careful planning, and also increasingly they do lend themselves to the use of technology to make them more efficient. And the good news therein is if you can apply that technology in the right way, you will see significant improvement and productivity gains and therefore savings in terms of cashable savings and resource savings. But they are resource intensive is the first thing that we would say. You need a whole range of people, vehicles, activities, facilities to enable you to do them. So resource intensity is certainly one of the characteristics. The other thing that is interesting, if you look at any kind of research carried out in terms of access to local public services delivered by local authorities, Bin collection and therefore refuse services and waste services by natural extension are very, very high on the list of important services that citizens and residents will identify. So issues like missed or contaminated bins or problems with collections or delayed collections are very, very emotive issues, as all of you that work in a waste function will be acutely aware, I'm sure. So it's really important that you get these things right because there's a reputational and a practical and operational risk if you get them wrong. And they're important services for people's quality of life. Getting your rubbish taken away in an efficient and timely manner is important for all of us as householders and residents and customers of our local authority. And because of that kind of weight of complexity and importance, and also waste services are a kind of high volume generator of inbound contact into a local authority, there's often an understandable, not aversion I wouldn't say, but certainly a concern about changing things too dramatically, and rightly so. And because of that, there is a tendency we've seen to be a slight lack of innovation and automation in the process because of that kind of nervousness about upsetting things and creating problems in doing so. So one of the things we've seen is generally a lack of automation, lack of innovation. That's changing slowly. But one of the great benefits of building in technology to the end-to-end process is it gives you a whole bunch of additional levers of governance and control, particularly around analytics and analysis. Because if you're doing something digitally, the trail of data that's left behind by a customer when they report an issue or raise an issue or contact the council digitally, the way that your vehicles, that your crews, that your cruising cabs operate around the borough in terms of rubbish collection and waste removal is much richer. You've got a lot more data to work with in terms of how the service is being used, where it's being stretched, where it's working well, how customers are engaging with it. So there are areas where risk can be perceived quite easily and understandably because it's such a resource-intensive and high-profile area. But there are significant benefits if you can kind of make the incremental steps towards full digitisation of your waste processes, and that's really what we're espousing in this session today. And My Council Services is certainly one of the recognised platforms on which you can achieve that. So to turn our attention briefly to My Council Services, which is the product that Abavus provides, it's an entirely software as a service-based application, bar those elements that are resident on mobile devices and tablets and in-cab devices and so on. More about that later. But I want to talk briefly about the way that My Council Services maps to the contemporary local government structure. So this is a somewhat simplified schematic, but if you think about the area of the diagram in the centre as representing the way that a local authority is currently set up. So you've got customers at the top of the stack who will be accessing services that are delivered by you as local authorities, typically by digital channels, but you'll almost certainly still be running telephone channels and so on and so forth. And they will be needing to get through, usually by a customer services contact centre of some description, to one or other function, because they'll have particular service area requirements. In this case, we're going to be looking at waste. Just a word about what Abavus does in this context. We don't just work with waste functions and environmental services functions, we work across the board. We are an enterprise platform and service provider in that regard, so we work right across the piece. But waste is an increasingly large and important area for us. So you've got the customer services layer at the top, you've got the sharp end of service delivery sitting in the middle of that kind of local authority function, the kind of beating heart of it, if you will, and then you've got IT in the background facilitating that in terms of data consolidation, system delivery, and so on and so forth. So if that's the sort of the generic structure of a more contemporary local authority, how does our platform map towards that? So in terms of the My Council Services platform itself, it's a modular system. It breaks out into quite a large number of modules, but they in turn kind of collect into three primary areas. There is a My Council Services SelfService CRM and service desk element. I'll show you some of that as we move through this morning. Sitting behind that then are a series of modules, what we call kind of line of business or functional modules, one of which is our waste module. So as I said a few moments ago, waste is an incredibly important part of what we do these days in terms of our existing customers and the ongoing growth of our business. And that waste module also allies very closely to the third broad component of the platform that we provide, which is mobile working, the ability to make digital the experience for the operative who's out in the borough, either on foot or on a vehicle, be that a 30-ton refuse wagon or a smaller vehicle, in order that they can access their digital task list, their round collection information, that they can benefit from turn-by-turn satellite navigation. All of those kind of feed into our mobile working capability. So that's the broad structure of the platform. in terms of the kind of 3 big buckets of modules. I just want to drill down on that in a little bit more detail. The components of the self-service and CRM piece includes a native e-form designer, which is a graphical user interface-based e-form designer. You can design all sorts of e-forms through that capability. We offer alongside that an integrated suite of native mobile applications, both for use by residents, customers, and also for use by mobile workers. The native mobile application element of that gives it a true offline working capability. It can also be delivered in terms of those e-forms that are designed, can be bundled up and delivered as a My Account Enterprise interface. We can offer you a range of different security types in terms of accessing some areas of digital service, in terms of single sign-on, two-factor verification, in terms of ID authentication, and of course we're GDPR compliant. We also offer a complete suite of web services for integration. So if anyone's on the line from IT, you'll be familiar with system integration, and we do an awful lot of that in terms of our work with UK local authorities. I should mention at that point that we only work with UK local authorities. Abovus has built this entire business in the UK local authority sector. So that's the kind of self-service CRM piece. I'll be showing you some of that in a few moments. If I then drop down to the modules component, we'll be showing a few of those to you today. We'll certainly show you elements of the waste module. We may well touch on elements of the license and contracts management module, and we'll take a look at scheduling, bookings and appointments. But often these 3, in terms of an end-to-end digital waste solution, are often knitted together. All of that in terms of workflow can then be supported by our integrated and integral rules engine, so the ability to have automated workflow configured through the platform so that things happen without the need for human intervention unless it's necessary to do so. But there's various line of business modules that sit behind the self-service CRM interface that make up the waste solution as it currently stands. I've also mentioned mobile working and the way that we do that, and the way that we can deploy digital processes to mobile and remote devices, and certainly waste worker, which is something we'll show you this afternoon, is a fundamental component therein. So that's a bit of an overview and a quick step through some of the way that the architecture, if you like, at a non-technical level fits together in terms of the way that the platform and the products are designed. I just want to talk a bit now about the specificity of some of the waste processes that we can enable, and I'll build this slide up and then I'll talk you through it. So really sitting at the center of any waste solution that we provide is the round collection database, which is really the kind of belly of the beast that is our waste module, that ability to store securely, safely and to manage effectively that range of round collection activities, be that domestic curbside for households, be it commercial waste, be it clinical waste, whatever it happens to be. That round collection day sits at the center of our waste solution. It's also possible for us to integrate to third-party round collection databases and deliver what we call an integrated waste solution, but I'm going to focus on the kind of end-to-end piece that we tend to offer. With that round data in position and in place, that then enables you to do a whole bunch of different things. Now, one, for example, which we know is a very high volume reason for inbound contact to local authorities, it's just querying things like, know my bin though, when does my bin get collected? Lots of local authorities spend tens of thousands of pounds printing laminated cards that get hung on the back of bins and then pinned up on notice boards in kitchens, and whilst that may be an acceptable approach, there are smarter ways of doing that digitally these days, and we'll show you an example of that in a few minutes. Also things like contracted waste services, so the ability to do something under contract, so that could be green garden waste collection, for example. So a customer signs up for an annual fee to have a 240 litre green wheelie bin delivered to their property that they can then sling all their lawn trimmings in or hedge trimmings in or whatever it might be, and you as a local authority then agree to collect them every 14 days or whatever the way it is set up. So there's an ongoing contract between the customer. So our permit, license and contracts module often works alongside the waste solution as part of the enablement of some of those waste processes. Scheduled waste services, so another high volume inbound contact reason for local authorities we know is things like missed bin reporting, and we enable you to build some logic around those in terms of setting up rules that allow some collections to be reported within a certain amount of time, or if a bin is flagged as contaminated out on the round by a mobile worker in the cab of a vehicle, then that removes it in terms of being permissible for reporting as a missed bin. So it's this sort of logic that you can wrap around the processes that can save you time, effort, and energy and resources. And then you've got things like ad hoc waste services. So think about bulky item removal that you may or may not charge customers for in your borough, but the ability for someone perhaps to book a slot, an appointment for that to be collected on a given day, and for that to then happen and for them to potentially pay for that. So we enable all of the waste processes in the round, and that includes and extends to both route and round optimization. So we have a full optimization engine, route optimization and round optimization engine built into the platform, and that in turn can be deployed out to in-cab technology. So there is a complete 360-degree, if you will, capability in terms of enabling waste processes. So that's some of the background. What I'm going to do next is just kind of hop off the slides now, and we're going to go and look at some technology live. So we're just 15 minutes or so into our discussion or call webinar this morning. I'm going to get rid of my scribbles on the screen, and I'm going to jump across in the first instance to my browser, and I'm just going to pull up an interface for my council service. I'm going to show you it this morning as a portal interface. So rather than individual forms, I'm going to show it to you in a kind of demonstration portal that we use. So the first thing I'm going to do is log into the customer portal, our demo customer portal. This is where I need to remember login credentials, and what I've found over the years is that I cannot talk and type at the same time. So we'll log in and keep our fingers crossed that I've got those credentials correct. And that then takes us into our first view of My Council Services proper. So what you're looking at here, folks, is the customer-facing side of My Council Services presented as a portal. And in a minute or two, I'll just give you a kind of quick tour of the screen real estate. But it's also important to say that whilst we're demonstrating this in a completely vanilla branding environment, so it's just branded as My Council Services, when we implement this for our customers, this is implemented as a fully integrated and embedded component within the council's .gov.uk council property. So it will be a web property, I should say. So it will be fully branded. It will be you're picking up on the style sheet of the council's website, and it will be an integrated and completely embedded component within the .gov.uk website that you're running as part of customers. So you're not sending customers off to third-party sites and so on. So we're looking at it in a very kind of vanilla format in this regard. We've also got everything turned on, so there's quite a lot going on screen. And on that note, I'll give you a quick tour of actually what we've got. So on the left-hand side, you've got a completely configurable left-hand sidebar, behind which each menu option, a whole range of kind of nested functions can exist. So, for example, if I go into Book It, which is one of the options I've got set up here, you can see there's forms for booking various different types of activities and services, one of which is bulky collection, which we'll take a look at in a minute. If I jump back to the home screen, talk to you about the left-hand sidebar, all fully configurable. So when a council is using My Council Services, you have access to a back-office console that allows you to configure this to change feature, function, appearance, branding, all these sorts of things. So you've got full control over it at any given point in time. In the center of the screen are a series of what we call widgets or hotspots. Again, completely configurable that can link through to a form, a nested collection of forms of a certain type, existing web content, a third-party application that's surfacing data for customers, whatever it might be. So widgets sit in the center of the screen. And then on the right-hand side, you've got a whole bunch of what is effectively management information for the customer to help them manage their relationship with the council. So any service requests that they've listed, anything they've started but haven't finished, contracts that are in place, any appointments or bookings they might have, any payments that are overdue. And then from a single sign-on perspective, we won't go into detail on this today because we don't have time, but link through to things like council tax systems and revenues and benefits systems so you can surface data securely to verified customers. So within the portal, it can become and I don't particularly like the phrase, but the one-stop shop where a customer can really kind of collect everything that they need and do everything they need to do. So on that note, let's go and do some things on a waste angle in relation to waste services. So the first thing we might want to do is look up my bin collection schedule and my refuse collection calendar. I can do that as a residential customer. I could do it as a business customer. And the first thing that I do in the way that we present that for a customer is to give them effectively a postcode lookup, a property-based lookup capability. So you could do it for your own property, or you could do it for your elderly relative that lives 4 streets away and has like a different collection schedule, or whatever it might be. So if I put in a postcode, and I'm just using a North East London postcode, click on search, that will then link directly to the NLPG, National Land and Property Gazetteer. So that passes directly to your own excerpt of that, which is the LLPG, the Local Land and Property Gazetteer, that you'll be working with as local authorities. So I can then select addresses that I want to look up in terms of refuse collection. So I'm going to select a particular one, and then I'm going to click go, and it's going to go and retrieve the data that's pertinent to that property from the round collection database. So you can start to see in real time how that slide with all the hexagons on it starts to speak to the way that the solution works in practice. So I look up a property with its UPRN, that then retrieves for me the relevant refuse collection data for that property. So I can see I've got a couple of garden collections, I've got more than one container, I've also got a recycling collection coming up on the 7th of October. I can do a couple of things from here. I can either view the calendar online, so I can scroll down and see all of my upcoming collections from September through to the end of the year. As these collections get completed, so they're scrubbed off, so you've got a dynamic real-time collections calendar available to you. And I can also do 2 things. I can then download that as a PDF if I wish, print it off, stick it to my fridge door or my kitchen corkboard or wherever it happens to be. And I can also, in a more kind of 21st century context, I can download an iCal version and have that automatically loaded up to my smartphone or my tablet or my PC, and with reminders set and so on and so forth. The other thing that can also be set via the communications capability of the platform is automatic notifications to go out to the customer perhaps a day before a collection or whatever it might be. So there's lots of ways of simplifying and actually removing costs from those processes of just managing that round collection information in terms of the way that customers use it. So there's example number 1 of a waste process, just looking up your own refuse collection schedule for your property or another property in the borough in which you have an interest in their refuse collection schedule, and the ability to kind of get that onto your own devices. So that's looking up what we call Know My Bin Day. So then I want to take you into an area of the platform that's more about kind of inbound service requests. So I'm going to go into the report it set of nested forms. So I'll draw your attention up to the topmost, or the penultimate from topmost option on the left-hand sidebar, which is the report it options. So these are a bunch of nested report it forms within the portal. I just mentioned it one last time. We're presenting this today as part of an end-to-end customer portal. You don't have to do that. You can disaggregate this portal and you can have individual forms integrated into your web property. So it could just be the missed bin form for which a customer doesn't have to register, but certainly you'd need to know their property information in terms of reporting a missed bin, and you may want to capture other pieces of information. So we'll look at the missed bin reporting form and we'll click on that. And this time it does something specific. You'll recall, I expect, 12 or 13 minutes ago when I started showing you some demonstration of the platform, I actually logged in under a customer profile. So I'm a registered customer at this point. So if I click select, which allows me to select the collections that I think have been missed, what that will do is 2 things. It will first of all retrieve my registered address as a customer. So it knows that this particular customer, it's a pretend customer profile under the name of a made-up Gary Wilcox that I logged in as, resident of 78 Grove Hill. And it then presents back to Gary the list of all of the collections that are registered as authorised against his property, and it then gives him a message as to whether those collections can be reported as missed. So what's going on here, folks, is a set of rules running in the background that allow the data to be presented in a certain way. So if, for example, 3 days has passed since the collection was completed, or in Gary's case, he thought it was missed from a collection, he's no longer allowed to report that. That might be a rule that you set up. If that collection was flagged as contaminated electronically via an in-cab device via a member of the crew, that information would have been fed back into the round management database in real time, and in this case it would have been presented back as a contaminated bin was presented. That's why it wasn't collected, and here's a photograph of it. So what we're allowing councils to do with this approach is to wrap some intelligence, operational intelligence, around the bin collection schedule, the missed bin reporting process, I should say. So let's, for the purposes of demonstration, just select one. I want to report that the collection on the 23rd of September for my garden waste as missing. It's permissible. I'm allowed to report it. I can click on continue. I can add a photograph of it if I wish. I must be the only man in the UK with pictures of missed bins on his computer, but there we go. I upload that process. I'm really using a standard My Council Services e-form at this point with the missed collection plugin running, and I can then go ahead and I can submit that. So I've literally done probably 4 or 5 clicks there. So the platform has automated the process of identifying my primary property, because that's my registered address. I'm using this as a registered customer. It's then presented with me the options for reporting those bins that can be reported as missing, those that are permissible subject to the rules that the council may have set around that, and then I can upload a picture of it if I wish, and then I can go ahead and submit that. So that effectively then creates a service request. As soon as that service request is created, there's a set of data around that, and there's a number of things that can be done around and with that in terms of automated workflow. And we'll take a look at that in the next 10 or 15 minutes as we move through. So there's a couple of examples, both front and center in terms of waste processes, and certainly things that we know to be very high volume causes of inbound contacts to councils, particularly missed bins. So let's go and do something a little bit different at this point. Let's go and look, still on the waste angle, but let's go and look this time at Book It. So we'll use our bulky collection form as our next example. And I'll click on that now, and that will take us into another form. So this is a slightly more, I suppose, complex process in that regard. It's a bookings process. The first thing it does as a form is it presents you with a breadcrumb trail across the top of the screen. So we can see we're on step 2, which is details of the special collection of a 5-step process. It gives you a little bit of information about that process. So it tells you, the items you've placed outside, so on and so forth. And then the little blue button appears in this case. It doesn't have to be a blue button. It can be any colour you like. It can be any size you like. You can have the text on that you require to allow us to select the date of collection. So again, there's a few things going on here which are simplifying the process of the booking process for bulky item collection. The first thing it's doing is highlighting the address that the customer is resident at, and then the second thing it's doing in terms of selecting a date is it's only presenting the dates during which a collection in this area of the borough is happening. So this is a zoned collection example. You may not run your special collections and your bulky item removals this way, but you can configure this platform to work in any way that you want. We've actually taken this process from one of our customers and borrowed it as an example of an implemented process. It's actually from one of our Welsh customers. So it only presents the date on which Gary, in this example, as our pretend customer, can actually request a collection, because that's the only day that we're doing bulky item removals in his area of the borough. So we'll select the day that Gary's, let's say, got a day off because he wants to be at home when it's happening. He then clicks on confirm, and it will then present back to him the fact, any slots that are available. If there are no slots available, then say no slots available, perhaps try another day. But you can configure this any way that you like. You don't have to have it in this own collection setup. There are as many variations on the classical theme as you can think of, and we've catered to many of them over the years. So if Gary's happy with that collection slot between 9:30 and 4:30 on the 5th of October, he can then select that. The other element to this particular process is what we call a weighted process. So you can then start to select a number of items. It's also a charged process. So the first thing you might say is, well, I've got an electrical appliance that needs removing, and it is a fridge. That's a bulky item with a weighting of 1, and what you'll see is that's starting to add a cost to the collection of this particular set of items. If he then wants to add something else, he might say that I've got a piece of furniture, and that is a bed. So we'll add that. That's got a weighting of 2, so it's a bigger item. It's going to take up more space on the van, and it's going to have a higher cost attached to it. So Gary's costs are now at £23 for this particular collection. If he could go on adding that, it's also picking up data about him as an individual. He's registered for an assisted collection, so he could select that box if he wanted to, or you could auto-enroll him as an assisted collection permissible individual. If he's happy with that and he's happy to pay, he then clicks on proceed, and it writes that set of transactions, the detail of that collection, into the process for Gary at this point. So that's now part of that service request, part of that inbound service request. So if we then click on next, he gets an opportunity to upload some pictures. Again, this is more for demonstration purposes. You wouldn't typically have customers adding pictures of bulky item collections, but you might do. So we'll find something, we'll take advantage of that for this example. We'll upload that, and then we'll move on to the next step. And the next step is really our first point of integration. So I'll just let that photo upload. Click on next. And you can see that what we're getting popped up here is a payment integration. So this is the first stage at which we are connecting with a system that is external to My Council Services. So we're actually integrating into a payment gateway. So we're using the Barclaycard payment gateway in this particular example. We've done lots and lots of payment integrations for paid processes, Capita, Civica, Iridium, WorldPay, Go Cardless. There's a whole range, bottom line up for direct debits. There's a whole range of them we've done integrations to. So, and once those integrations are done to your payment gateway, you can use them for all your waste processes that are paid and any other process as well across the council if you're using My Council Services more broadly. So I'll click on that. I'm guessing that again certainly over the recent history, if you weren't already, you're acutely familiar with online shopping and online payment now, given the ongoing COVID situation. So I'll just step through this fairly quickly rather than narrate it too heavily for you. I'll put in some test card details and an expiry date and the verification code, and we'll click on confirm my payment. So it's allowed Gary to book a slot. It's integrated that with the round management information. It's calculated the cost using our product catalog in the platform. It's then handed him across to the payment gateway integration. That payment has been approved. In this context, the payment has been collected by the council. Click on next. It will then give him a confirmation of that service request that he's submitting, along with the photo of the fridge that he was adding in. And then we click on submit. And that then exists as a service record, a service request, as a case that can then be managed. It can then be automated through using workflow. And the customer has done that entirely off their own bat with no need for human intervention to this point. So at that point of proceedings, what I'm going to do is just take you across to some of the mobile working capability, because of course, when you're talking about waste processes, there's invariably something that has to be collected at some point in the process. So we'll go and take a look at that now, and I'll show you a little bit of mobile working capability, assuming that all of the technology behaves itself. So let me just refresh a couple of screens here. What I will do, I'm going to use a little bit of third-party technology to share a screen on a mobile device, a tablet in this case. So I'll just start that up and see if I can get the thing connected. Bear with me just a second. So that little electronic melody is a sign that I've been able to connect my screen, and you should, if I just drag this across, now be seeing the screen of my Galaxy S5, which is what I'm holding in my hand this end, and the screen of which you're seeing on your screens, I hope. I think you are. So I'll just draw your attention to the My Council Services demo application. So I mentioned earlier in our broadcast that as well as shipping all of the kind of browser-based software as a service technology as part of a My Council Services implementation, we also deliver a suite of branded native mobile applications that are tethered to the broader SaaS platform. So if I open that application up, it's actually just refreshing a screen at the minute, so we'll let it complete doing that. But what this gives you is two things, effectively. The native mobile application can be downloaded from the app stores by customers, and it can also be used as a mobile working device for members of your staff. And that's obviously fairly pertinent for anyone that's involved in waste practices and waste processes. And while we're just letting that screen refresh, what you will notice on there is that one of the things that we did about 9 minutes ago now at 12:25, you can just see it on the top of the screen, is on Gary's behalf as part of the demo process on the customer portal, is we created a missed bin collection. So that missed bin collection has been gone through the back office, and it has now been transferred automatically across to the appropriate mobile worker's device. So that means that mobile worker can then go in and they can interact with that. They can go and make the collection if necessary, and they can complete any actions that they might want to do. What I'll do later is I'll jump back to this screen and we'll show you some of the turn-by-turn satellite navigation in-cab capability in terms of the larger rounds and collections. So I just wanted to show you that particular automated flow of work through to a native mobile application on a mobile device, and we'll come back to that in just a few minutes. So where we'll go next is we'll jump across to the back office. So I'm going to bring up another interface and we'll log into another set of screens at this point. So we're taking a slight change in direction at this point, folks. What we're doing now, everything we've done so far, we've done two things. We've looked at everything on the browser-based interface that customers can use as a portal. And now what we're going to do is take a look at the My Council Services back office. So I'll bring up a separate browser. It's a very similar kind of login scenario in this regard. And I'm just going to type in some details. I'm logging in under a different profile at this stage of the demonstration. So as we log in, you'll see that the screens in some regards bear some comparison to the sort of environment that we were working with on the customer portal. But we're looking now at an area of the platform that would be the preserve of council officers or certainly employees that are operatives on behalf of the council, and you're using a back office capability. And what we're looking at specifically is Service Desk. So Service Desk is really a kind of de facto case management capability on the platform. And we're looking specifically at the waste catalog. So you can look at any set of forms across any kind of function where you've got digital interaction with customers set up. We're looking at waste forms in this particular example. And what you can see are the two service requests that I created as part of the demonstration a few minutes ago, both the missed collection that we saw on the mobile device at 12:25 today, and the special collection that we created at 12:31 today, both under Gary's profile, and both have now been subject to an automated rule on the platform that has allowed them to be transferred out to effectively a mobile worker, me in this case, which was the example that I just showed you. So what we'll do then is we'll go and we'll take a look at some of the detail that sits behind them. So if I go into the special collection, first off, you can see all of the information around that particular case or service request or whatever your preferred naming convention is for these things in your organisation. You can see the customer that submitted it. We can see the details of the special collection that were requested. We can see the photograph that Gary uploaded, and we can click through to that and take a look at exactly what it is he wants us to collect. We can see the location, and you can then see evidence of the automated workflow in action. So you can see that there was a task created to ask for a collection, and that's been assigned out to, in this case, both to me, but two tasks created. And any notes that might have been added through the back office. We can also see that there was a booking. So this is using the Waste Bookings plugin to enable this process to happen. So there's multiple things going on here. We've then got on the right-hand side pretty much every other option open to us in terms of case management. So we can add a document, we can add a note, we can record an interaction with the customer. So as well as things happening in an automated way, we can also enable them to happen in a manual way, and you can do that through the Service Desk case management capability. You can view the history of that, so we can see everything that's happened to it, so you get a full audit trail from the point at which it was submitted right up to the point of assignment of tasks to individuals. Once those individuals then sign those tasks off, that will then be captured in the digital audit trail. So if there's ever an inquiry of any description or any questions asked about exactly what's been done, everything's date, time and user stamped every time something happens to a data object on the platform. You can update owner status information, you can send a document, send an email. So you've really got a full case management capability within Service Desk. What I'll then do, what I want to do next is go into some of the waste-specific console capability. So we're kind of really getting into the belly of the beast at this point, before we just go and take a final look at some of the sat-nav capabilities that exist on device, and we'll bring back the mobile device into the broadcast. So I'm going to click on waste at this point. And what I'm going to do is look up a particular set of collection information, or around collection information. So, sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing. I'm going to click on action first of all. That will bring up a pop-up for us. And I'm going to go to round management. So we're going to take a look at some of this round data. I'll just let that load for a second. So to look at the round data, so where we're stepping into here is the back office kind of console interface into the route optimization capability and the round management capability. So you need to take a look at any of that round management data. You need to take a look at the collection type. So we'll go and look at domestic. And if I then hit select a day, I'm going to select a Thursday. So now I've got some round data that's pertinent to that. I've got a particular round loaded into the database. We can select a particular day. I'm going to go back in time a little bit to July, and I'm going to deliberately select the 16th of July, and I'm going to click on Go. What that will do then, this interface will query the round management database, and it will present back to us the complete array of the property and collection information for that domestic round collection. So you can see all of the, in this case, sample data loaded into the screen. I can look at that as a tabular report. I can also look at that as a map. I'll just draw your attention to the leftmost column. There's an order column here. There's no order against this. This round, as it currently stands, so it's the domestic collection on a Thursday with this round number on this particular date, has not yet been optimized. So if I put that into a map view, you will see the spaghetti soup that a non-optimized round actually creates. So if I zoom out on that a little bit, this is every collection point across all of those properties, and this is actually a relatively small sample of data from the depot out to each of those properties on that particular route on that particular day. So this is what a non-optimized round looks like. So just hold that thought for a minute and have a little think about how difficult that would be from a manual perspective to start to unpick and make sense of that, to optimize it in terms of vehicle efficiency, collection efficiency, time out on the road, all of those sorts of factors. And this is really why councils are investing in optimization capability, and really why we've built optimization capability into our platform. So that's the non-optimized look of a route, which is a fairly confusing beast. I'm now going to change to a different collection on a different day, the prior week, and I'm going to click on Go, and we'll see what magic is weaved by the optimization algorithms that we deploy against that round collection data. So the first difference that you will see is that every property has now been looked at in terms of its spatial location, in terms of its position, and in terms of the road, in terms of the number of containers that it has for that particular collection type, in terms of the vehicle properties, all of those kind of, in terms of local hazards on the road. So if there's a school on the road, that can all be factored into the optimization process. And that now presents itself with a clear and distinct order. And if I then present that as a map view, you'll see a very, very different picture. So I'll click on the map view, and you will see a much more decipherable and recognizable picture of what a round collection actually looks like once it's been optimized. A much less confusing and daunting task. So that's using the machine learning algorithms within the My Council Services platform to optimize the route for maximum efficiency and maximum time. And you can see that you're looking at an optimized route because it tells us that this route was last optimized on the 16th of July 2020 at 11:55. What I can also do from that point is I can click on statistics, and it will draw back all of those round collection statistics for that particular route. So we know that there are 1,168 drops, so that's collection points on the round, with 1,168 associated tasks. The duty time to complete that round is 5 hours, 45 minutes and 10 seconds. So we're starting to get into the kind of real efficiency facts and figures of an optimized route. We know the distance covered, and therefore we can calculate fuel consumption and so on and so forth. We can start to compare and contrast. Start time, finish time, time to end location, and again, total distance covered. So you can start to see the difference between a non-optimized route and the work you'd have to do longhand, and the time that can be saved in terms of deploying a smart machine learning optimization algorithm against what is quite complex spatially referenced data in the shape of round information. So how does that look out on the device? So I'm going to bring my mobile device back into play at this point and just show you kind of how that translates out into an in-cab installed device. So I will just restore the connection to my tablet, bring that across. And this time I'm going to take you into the waste worker options. I'll just draw your attention to the center of the native mobile application. So we're back on the native mobile application that I showed you a few minutes earlier. We're looking at the home screen of that. And if you're logged in as a council operative, as a worker, as a trusted user, and you've got the appropriate privileges, everything on My Council Service is governed by what we call RBAC, Role-Based Access Control. And if you're a waste worker, for example, you're responsible for the collection of refuse on a domestic basis, and you're a driver for that vehicle, you've got an in-cab device installed, you might have access to waste worker, for example. And if I tap on that, it will just reorientate the screen for me, and it automatically presents me with the round that I'm working on for that particular day. Before I leave the depot, I can, of course, select Get Waste Data, and that will retrieve a particular round as a fresh set of data. You can also incorporate into these sorts of processes things like pre-round vehicle safety inspection. So you can use the e-form capability on the platform to draw up a form that allows a driver or a crew head to go through a vehicle safety inspection process. But what I'm going to do is click on Map View. That will then reload that data in a slightly different orientation. I then get on the right-hand side of that screen, first of all, my own location, so it will tell you where I am, and then I can actually, I'll just pop it into demo mode. Actually, I'm going to go to Route Options, and I'm going to go into Demonstrate, and it will actually start that off, and it will start to run through. What I'm also going to do is just speed up the rate at which that travels, just for the purpose of the demonstration. And we're probably traveling at something like a virtual 80 or 90 miles an hour in a 30-ton wagon, not necessarily recommended. But you'll see it will just work through. And if I scroll through these will be flagged up, and you'll hear them ping as we get to the collections. I'm unfortunately one side of the country today in terms of where it's starting the route. This is actually data from South Wales. But if I just scroll down and tap on one, then if you're interacting with this data, you can flag something as container not present or contaminated. So there's kind of minimal interaction required to capture much richer data. And of course, what the crew are then being delivered with is real-time travel information, hazard information that's pertinent to that particular collection that they're on, and they're getting that all the time, in real time, in the cab. And they're being able to interact with their particular round collection information. So I just wanted to share with you some of the details of what that in-cab technology looks like. I'm conscious of time. We're coming up to 10 minutes to the hour, and I promised we'd be on our way within an hour, and I've had quite a lot to show you. So I'm just going to draw the session to a close with a couple of other bits and pieces that are certainly relevant to running end-to-end digital waste capabilities. I'm just going to draw your attention down to the administration screens on the left-hand side in the back office. And this is really where all of the, as you may have guessed by the name, where all the admin and setup and configuration happens. So one of the things that is certainly unique about My Council Service is an end-to-end digital platform for waste and for all other local authority service areas, is we give you the tools of governance and control in terms of setting up processes and procedures that are digital in nature. And that can be quite simple from form design, or indeed, if you want to, you don't want to design forms from scratch, you can use our form store. So if I click on Form Store, you can take a look at which other councils have got, for example, missed bin forms. So if I search for missed, see if I get any matches. Maybe missed bin would be a better idea. Oh, maybe we'll do something different. We'll try a fly tip. I thought I had a few examples in there. There we go. So you can see a whole bunch of different examples of customers that have created fly tip forms. This is just a demo instance, of course, and you can preview those forms, you can select them, you can import them into your instance, so you can really kind of save yourself time in terms of setup and configuration. Of course, the first time that we implement this with customers, we're often working with a customer to set up and do all that configuration with you or for you, but thereafter we train you to do that yourselves, and you can come back to us for assistance if you wish. If I just scroll down, we'll also find the waste configuration area. So, for example, from within here, you can configure particular collection types. You can set things up, you can change them. So if you suddenly move from a 240 litre to a 320 litre container for large domestic properties, you can set that different collection type up and integrate it into your process. So you've got all of the levers of control and configuration at your disposal on the platform. And you've got wrapped around that from an admin's perspective, any level of consulting or professional services that you may want or require to make sure that you're working with that efficiently. So that's some of the kind of administration, because there's a huge amount of detail in here, and we just don't have time to go into that at a very high level. But I just want to give you the sense of our philosophy that underpins the development of the platform, which is we want to give you the levers of control and to allow you to configure things as you see fit. So final kind of stop on the whirlwind tour. I just want to give you a little bit of kind of reporting capability. So if we jump to dashboard, we can go and we can look at inbound service requests by day, by week, by month, by either by general service area, so in this case waste, or we could drill down in terms of special collection, and it will refresh all of that data in real time. So we've got some kind of dashboard reporting. And then if you want to get into more detailed reporting, we can also go down to analytics, and you've got a whole bunch of really kind of pre-configured reporting capabilities. So things like finance reconciliation reports. So if you're integrating into a payment gateway, so we use the Barclaycard payment gateway for the example that we use in the bulky item collection, and we wanted to look at, say, waste special collection on particular dates over the last month, we can go and we can run a report against that. So you've got a whole bunch of reporting options. So that's a really kind of a whirlwind tour through the capabilities of the My Council Services platform as they currently exist. I'll just bring things to an orderly conclusion. I'll let you get on your way by midday, certainly. So just some advice to get started, really. My Council Services can be implemented incrementally. So you might start with functions within waste or environmental services, and you might then roll it out to other service areas once you kind of get momentum against your transformation project. What we often find to be useful is to start and identify and start with some tactical wins and then plan for the mid to longer term strategic goals. And that helps you manage risk and investment. It helps you develop some confidence and some competency with the platform and to get comfortable with your relationship with us as a provider to your local authority. So that kind of tactical and phased approach to implementation is often one that works well for authorities, and we've got lots of examples of that. The other thing I would say is that My Council Services is open. So we enable integration easily with other third-party applications, and that's important within waste and environment services, and it's important with other areas of the local authority. The other thing I would say, and I have this deliberately as my last comment on these sorts of sessions, is just to say that technology is really only part of the solution. There's a significant effort in terms of process mapping and process planning that needs to be gone through. There's a significant element of education, both of staff and potentially of customers, in terms of the implementation of any kind of transformative technology and digital technology. So whilst we think the software, and no doubt you think the software will be important to that, it is only part of the solution. On that note, folks, just remains for me to say and reiterate a couple of points that the slides will be available for download. There will be a recording of today's session available. And if you'd like to ask more questions, or if you want to arrange a one-to-one session, please don't hesitate to get in contact. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now. Have a good day.